Welcome to our second quarantine episode of Casual Cinephilia, where enthusiastic amateurs talk very passionately about movies. I'm Ian.
I'm Lorian, and today we are talking about Labyrinth.
Which is a childhood staple in I think both of our lives, really.
Sort of.
Yeah? Not so much for you?
I saw it as a child, and it scared the shit out of me.
So...
And the only thing... my parents showed it to us probably when I was like, I don't know, pretty young. Under double digits. And the only thing I remember from that viewing, the only thing I remembered about the movie for years was David Bowie's hair. So I think I was traumatized by the Jareth mullet more than anything else. But then I saw it again in like late junior high or high school and loved it. So I don't know what happened the first time.
See, I think I'm almost exactly opposite. I remember watching my parents showing it to me at a young age, and I loved every single bit of it, and then didn't watch it for a long time, and then got into high school and watched it again, and realized how creepy the movie actually is. And now, like, it's been tainted for me, because, like, there's some really creepy themes in it.
Yes.
But I still have that whimsical love for it from my childhood. And so it's really a divisive film for me emotionally, because I love it, but it's also creepy as hell.
Yeah, it's essentially like a children's horror fantasy.
Yeah. It really is. And that was something...
Like spoilers.
Oh,
obviously.
Right. Spoilers for a movie that came out in 1987.
Yeah.
Let me double
86.
check that.
It's over
86.
30 years old, so...
Yeah.
At this point.
If you haven't seen it, why? Why haven't you seen it? I judge you. I judge you thoroughly. Anyways, the thing that I noticed this watch around was how... It was more of a realization in general of the genre rather than this movie, was that the 80s had a very particular take on fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that really hasn't come up since. Like, there was nothing like it before, and then there hasn't been really anything like it after. And I don't know if I could put my finger on what exactly is 80s fantasy, but if you see one, you know it's an 80s fantasy.
Sure. I'm gonna take a stab at it.
Okay.
Python writing.
Yeah, that's right. This was a
you
Terry
know Terry
Jones.
Jones wrote this?
Yeah, that was...
Terry Gilliam wrote half the others.
That's right. Huh. And I guess that's why The Man Who Killed Don Quixote kind of feels like it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And also, like, the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
Yeah.
Straight up fits the genre.
Definitely. You're so right. Okay, that makes so much more sense. This was a Terry Jones story.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this was kind of the dream team, right? You've got Terry Jones, Jim Henson, Brian Froud, David Bowie, all writing this thing together.
Yeah, and then produced by Lucasfilm, who was the juggernaut at the time.
Right.
So that's this movie didn't do well, did it?
No.
That makes me so sad.
I mean, it's done very well since.
Yeah.
It's one of those slow burn cult classic films, but no, it did not do well initially.
Man. Same with Dark Crystal, right?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. It makes me so sad because there's so much artistry that goes into the puppeteering and the crafting of those characters. Every character in this is so unique.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's hard to even fathom the set design, let alone the character and creature design in this.
That's Brian Froud.
Man. there's such intricate detail. And then you see things that are pure limitations of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the blue screen with the fireys.
You know what I just learned? That was not done on a blue screen.
What was it
That
done
was
on?
done on a background of black velvet because it was the darkest fabric they could find. All the puppeteers were in black velvet bodysuits, and the backdrop was black velvet. They didn't use a traditional blue key or whatever. They used black velvet.
Why?
It was the easiest thing at the time for them to blend the puppeteers into, I guess. I don't know.
I guess because the fireys are orange, the
Sure.
blue and orange would not work well with each other. But that's really the only thing that I can think of. But
Yeah, I don't know.
black velvet.
Black velvet.
That's bizarre. That must have been a weird set to be on.
Yeah, it must. And they used, like you do nowadays for this sort of thing, they used a computerized camera rig to get all the motions and stuff for when they shot the background.
Mm-hmm.
So they pulled out stops on this movie, I mean, first of all, the puppets were half animatronic.
Yeah.
The budget on this must have been insane. Just the glitter budget alone
Just
must have been phenomenal.
just the eyeliner budget
I
for David
aspire
Bowie.
to make art that allows me to use as much glitter as this film.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah, the eyeliner budget or the codpiece budget for Bowie. God.
So, for a child's film, there is a lot of bulge in this.
Yeah. No, there definitely is. And they chose like light gray stretchy pants, which is like, boy, what a way to emphasize that.
Oh, man. So, this movie is just so dark for how happy it is.
Yeah.
Like, going back to the fiery scene with the black velvet puppeteers, like that whole scene is about them losing their minds and then wanting to decapitate Sarah, the main character, Jennifer
Terry
Connelly.
Jones.
Like, it's just like you listen to the lyrics and it's literally just a group of people going insane, losing their minds, and wanting her to lose her mind with
Getting
them.
wild.
Yeah. And the way they try and make her lose her mind is by trying to pull her head off.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's all normal stuff.
Yeah. But even that being kind of a jarring visual, I think there's only two real visuals in it that are jarring. And it's not because they were done poorly. It was because they were done essentially before the technology was there. They were trying to do things that hadn't been invented yet. And I'm pretty sure they invented some of the stuff that we take for granted nowadays. But there was that blue screen / black velvet screen scene. And then the CG owl.
Yeah,
Which was hard to see.
A few years ago, well, at this point, a very, very many years ago, Buddy and I drove down to LA to sit and watch a talk with a bunch of digital animators at the Academy does a bunch of events for students and stuff. We went to one of those, and it was really interesting. A lot of the guys were talking just about that owl.
Really?
Because apparently it was the first full character on screen in a film.
Huh.
Like the first fully digitalized character. Like built from nothing to be put in an actual film.
That's crazy. See,
so it was like a huge thing in animation.
That's my point, is it looks terrible. But it was an invented
then you have John Lasseter
technology.
sitting up on a stage drooling about it 30 years later. Well, 20 years later. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. But still, 30 years ago now. But, man, 34 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it it's crazy what we take for granted with especially computer graphics.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays computer graphics are so good that and I'm not talking like CG characters or like, special effects. Everything that you watch has some sort of computer graphic or digital alteration in it.
Right.
Every commercial you see
even
has it.
Black Crystal or Dark Crystal, their new TV series version, had facial animation.
Yeah. Which
it's just everywhere now.
Yeah, and it's so taken for granted for how much it adds to things. But then you see something like the Labyrinth where like the best they had was that owl. And so it makes you realize that the Goblin City scene where there's hundreds of puppets and costumed characters running around doing choreography, a fight scene, explosions, houses are being ripped open so it's big old Ludo can
practical.
Sit in there. It all had to be there. It all had to be practical, like you said. It's just so insane to think about.
Do you know Ludo was puppeteered by one man?
You're kidding.
There's one man inside of the Ludo suit.
Jeez.
They had to design it. It's such a big costume. They had to design it so that two of their puppeteers would both be able to operate it because they needed to have rests so frequently.
Oh my God.
So technically speaking, there are two different men doing Ludo at any given time, but only one at a time.
How heavy do you think that costume is?
I think they said it was like 75 pounds.
Jeez, because it had a fully animatronic face.
It did. All of the larger characters had animatronic faces, but they still have to have their arm up in the head for motion of the head. He might have actually had he might have operated the mouth with his hand, and the animatronics might have done, the other facial expression, but yeah, he's just running around in this huge costume with one of his arms straight up over his head.
Well, that makes me question it, though, because there's a couple scenes where he uses both arms.
Yeah, you'll have a puppeteer seconding on your other arm oftentimes when you have to do big puppets like that.
Okay.
So that would be,
Ludo's
plausible.
My favorite character. I love Ludo.
He's good.
We'll have to take a picture of your birthday present you got for me, because
I got you a little Ludo.
A little baby Ludo. And it is the most adorable thing ever. We'll put that up on Patreon.
Yep.
Man. Shameless plug, if you want to support us during this economic downturn, during a pandemic, go to patreon.com/casualcinephilia. So yeah.
Yep.
We also have a little small things podcast things for Patreon exclusives. Anyways, back to the movie.
Another interesting puppet mechanic. I watched all the special features for Labyrinth within the last week.
Nice.
The Hoggle puppet.
Mm-hmm.
There is a small actor inside of the Hoggle puppet, and the reason that Hoggle makes so many grunts and noises is that the only way that actress could see is when Hoggle's mouth was open. So, if you watch the movie, you might notice that he grunts before he makes large movements, like walking towards walls or around corners. It's because she had to the mouth had to be open, so there had to be a reason for the mouth to open. So there had to be a noise every time she needed to see.
That's amazing.
That puppet was also puppeteered by a team of 5 people.
Well, it makes sense. The facial animations they get out of that were so intricate and so detailed. Like the moment after he gives Sarah the poisoned peach, like, though he does say, like, you hear his regret.
Right.
If they wouldn't have even had that, you could tell by his face that he regretted his decision to do that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's insane with a puppet, that you can see regret. Oh, so